So today I'm going to be taking a look at a Fears watch, and this is a watch I really haven't seen a lot in person before. It's one of my first times having hands-on with one, and let's see what it's all about.
So we have a diameter of 38 millimeters, lug to lug of about 43, height of about 11.9, and a lug width of 20 millimeters. Some other general specifications for the watch are going to have the ETA top grade 7001 movement beating away in here. This does have a closed case back, but you can opt for an open one for about an additional $250. The movement itself is supposedly finished completely in Britain, so there's that. You have a sapphire crystal that is nicely domed here, and it does have an inner AR coating as well as an outer AR coating. But as you can see, of course, there are still going to be reflections because there are always reflections, but when you're looking dead on, it does look pretty clear. We do have 50 meters of state of water resistance with a regular push-pull crown, and outside of that, the watch retails for about $3,000 US without tax, without VAT, all that good stuff. So starting off with the dial of this watch, and this is probably one of the more interesting parts about it, Fears uses what they consider an 18 karat yellow gold layered dial. I don't know exactly what that means, but of course 18 gold is incorporated in some way to the dial itself. They then use a glass bead blasted finishing to the dial and to that gold that gives it this more pebbly, sparkly, and very just interesting frosted finish. You can tell depending on the angle that I hold the watch, it goes from a very dark, very traditional looking gold to a very much brighter, more vibrant, more interesting yellow. Looking a little bit more generally, we do have the classic Fears pipette logo hands that are skeletonized and heat blued. The sub-seconds hand is also heat blued. And then we have these Arabic numerals that are done very three-dimensionally. They do raise off the dial quite a bit, and they are also coated in black gold, which is a very interesting finish I haven't seen before. They do look very gray, very anthracite, very almost blackish as you're looking straight onward. But as you tilt it, they do come more silver, more vibrant. It can be hard to see that color change because it's not multifaceted, so you don't get that color change just by looking at it at one angle. You do very much have to like tilt your wrist or just be in the right kind of ray of sun to be able to see the numerals light up a little bit more, but you know, it is what it is. So the text is kept as minimal as you can get here. We do have Fears at the 12 o'clock and Britain at the bottom of the dial here. While I do think it is fairly balanced because we do have the text at 12 and the sub-seconds here, to me the text is a little bit small and I would have preferred a little bit of a thicker or larger font for the Fears logo itself, because I mean it's almost like you're saying that this is what the brand is, but it's almost like it's hiding away on the dial a little bit. One fun fact is we do have the Railroad's outer track here, and at every 5-minute marker we do have the same pipette logo like we do have in the hands, and I do really like how they included that. I think undoubtedly the best part about the dial itself is that very interesting frosted finish applied to the dial with the gold. It gives it a lot of color changing ability to the dial itself, and as well as it just makes the texture appear and disappear at certain angles, and it is very lively and looks almost even better in direct sunlight too, which is nice.
So taking a look at the watch in natural sunlight, you can see in more shaded light, it takes on a very beautiful monotone kind of color to the dial. It doesn't change as much, but it can go from a richer gold to a little bit more matte coloration. The hands themselves can get a little bit bluer depending on the angle, but sometimes it is a little bit hard to see. And the markers as well, depending on what angle you have them at, they can light up a little bit, change from a more gray, matte gunmetal color to a more of a bright silver. And then the dial itself, again, depending on how extreme an angle you go, it can go very dark golden. In more of a natural sunlight look, in more of a direct harsh sunlight, you can see the dial itself and the texture pops out a lot more. You get more of that gold tone, more of that blasted look to the dial. And it's also not as much of a change on the numerals in the handset. It just does kind of stay in that black range, whereas the dial itself here is kind of the star of the show and looks pretty good in natural sunlight. It's hard for a watch to stand up to very harsh sunlight, but this one does it well.
So zooming on the dial, we can see just how interesting the dial finish is. It almost gives off the appearance of a hammered metal finish, and it does just look pretty interesting. It is not completely flat, but it is very small in terms of its three-dimensionality, so you can't really see how raised it is. But it is very nice because as you turn it, again, you do get a lot of color depth that comes out depending on the angle that you are viewing the dial at. The text on the dial is also done very well. Of course, the Fears, although it is small, has a nice three-dimensional print to it that is nice and inky and in this black tone. And the Railroad's track is done in a very similar print, with the pipette logo being especially three-dimensional and just having a very nice look to it. Moving on to the numerals, as you can see, as we move around, they do have a little bit of life to them. Being coated in this black gold, they do look very dark and anthracite and blackish gray as you're looking straight on, but as you move it, they come to life a little bit more, and not quite as shiny as regular stainless steel, but it gives off this grayish, almost gunmetal kind of titanium brightness to it. As you can see, the QC isn't perfect here. We do see kind of marks slash scratches slash chips on the 2 and 1 marker there. Looking around the rest of the dial, that's something I guess we just expect to see. The 11, there are marks and blemishes. The 10, while more minor, there are just some little specks there. Looking at the 9, there's just very slight scratching there on the 9, so this one actually is pretty good. Looking at the 8, there is some more dirtiness among the marker. So there are very few markers here that are perfectly QC'd. It is a little bit unfortunate to see, although it is maybe somewhat expected for the price point. Fears does really kind of hammer home how much their QC means to them, and the fact that the founder of the brand QCs each watch personally with a loop. And to be fair, if you're using a loop, you should be able to see these small imperfections. So although this may be within their standard, I think for the amount that they hype up the QC of their watch, they should pay a little bit more attention and kind of go that extra mile a little bit. Just by contrast, even though the 1 has a little bit of a scratch there on the top, the 1 is done very well. The 2 is also done very well without really any blemish there, and the 3, a pretty similar story. So some markers are better than the others, but as it stands, there are some QC issues that exist. Looking at the hands, the issues definitely don't stop. You can see the hand is very much, I guess, just dirty. There's marks everywhere. There's little splotches. There's a little bit of pitting or three-dimensionality or just bumps to the metal there. So this is, in my opinion, a very ugly hand up close. There's, I think, no two ways about it. It isn't very pretty. It doesn't look very premium. And in my opinion, the hands, to me, just look a little too thin for the rest of the watch. I get what they're going for. I get the skeletonization, but you could have just made the hands a little bit thicker, gave them a little bit more substance. That aside, the tone is very nice. The bluing is very cool. But again, that QC is not perfect. Moving on to the minutes hand, we see a similar story. There actually is a scratch or even maybe a crack there towards the base of the minutes hand, which is very interesting to see. Zooming in a little bit closer, it looks maybe just like a deep scratch. Another interesting point at this angle is the fact that the inside of the hands that are skeletonized aren't heat blued. Maybe they skeletonized it after heat bluing. I'm not 100% sure, but as it stands, it's a very weird finish. You do see some striations there. The tip is a little bit truly heat blued. I don't know. Very, very odd finish there. And the lack of finish is very interesting. Of course, looking from the side view there, but zoomed out slightly, again, the hands look a little bit rough. Definitely some QC issues going on. Looking at more of the length of the hand, a little bit of splotchiness like we saw. Definitely a lot towards the very end there. A lot of black, I don't even know what that is, dust, dirt, debris, something. Definitely just something that I think, in my opinion, shouldn't have made it by, but this is maybe just the regular figure standard. Then looking at the sub-seconds hand, definitely no prettier than the rest. At least they're consistent. In the sub-seconds, we do see the concentric circling. I don't believe this has the same frosted finish. It is just more of a base color that has a sunbursty pattern to it. So at certain angles, it becomes much more gold than the dial is, and it contrasts nicely. And you can see there, depending on the angle I hold it at, there's like this little spot or speck on that sub-second. It's not a huge issue, but it is there. And then looking at the center pinion there, lots of scratches, not very pretty. Again, if you're going to claim your QC is pretty good, honestly, I don't think I should be seeing this many issues. So moving on to the case of this watch, and this is a interesting point, I would say. It is nice because Fears is one of the only companies still doing cushion style cases, and that is very nice, especially a dressy cushion style case. We do have a very lovely shape here, which of course is square but also rounded at the same time. And you have this very strong square shape here that is done in a circular brushing. And you have these very gentle circular sides that pop out just very slightly from that more square inner shape. You have these lugs that are very much not integrated into the case body. They are a separate piece, almost like they're welded on. I don't know if they are, but it almost seems that way. And they're nicely done. The case itself doesn't have a huge amount of curvature to it. It is actually fairly flat. But looking more down the barrel here, the case does have a beautiful symmetry and just architecture to it. These very nice rounded corners where it's the thickest here in the very middle and kind of bows out to meet that point. This very nice curved edge along the entire case, starting at the lugs, going up to the top of the domed crystal and coming back down. It is a very nice sweeping, soft, and just interesting looking case shape. You do have a very nice onionish, like maybe smashed onion crown, we can call it. It's very petite, works well with the style, works well with the size, very nice to grip, very nice to wind. The movement itself, it is also very smooth, very comfortable to set and to wind. And it also keeps around 2 seconds a day, plus 2 seconds a day in my testing. So it is relatively accurate to the way they regulate it. I think one of my favorite parts about this case shape is this concave bezel here. It does have just a beautiful shape to it. It leads perfectly into this domed crystal and just gives a nice uniform shape to the entire watch. And it is just pretty well done. I do like how it looks. I do like how it's executed. And the case shape is nice. Going to the case back, on this one in particular, we do just have a flat, circularly brushed case back. Very no frills, very Rolexy. And nothing crazy here. We do have a little bit of a polished edge along the outside, but nothing dramatic. I did have a Fears in the past, which had a sapphire case back, and to me, it's not overly worth it. It is just the ETA 7000 movement in it. It's very simple, it's very basic. It looks very similar to the Alpha caliber from Nomos, and the way they put their Pipette logo on it, to me, it looks a little bit cheap, a little bit not as premium as the watch is trying to be in the rest of its elements. So if you want the sapphire case back, go for it, but I think making it slightly slimmer because of this solid case back is just a little bit of a cleaner look. Another detail I really like is, of course, we do have the circular brushing along the top case here, but then instead of like a bevel, we just have a meeting of the two finishes, this more rounded, high polished surface that very much contrasts perfectly and beautifully with the brushing. It's a very almost kind of harsh transition, but it's not harsh, it just is brushed and then polished. So it is nicely done, it does look good, and I do like how it's executed. So moving on to how this case wears, earlier I was wearing my Seiko Lord Marvel here. And here we have the Fear sitting on my 6.5 inch wrist. And I think size-wise, it is perfect. I've also gotten the chance to try on the 40mm of the Fear's case, and it also does wear very well. So even if you have a small wrist like mine, you can still pull off the 40 as well, because it does have a very compact feel and a very relatively short lug to lug. In terms of wearing experience, it is very nice because it is a slim watch. It wears very close to the wrist. It doesn't really have any daylight shining through. It is very comfortable. Cushion cases aren't typically sharp, and this one is no exception. It is very rounded, so there isn't any really digging on the wrist. Even when the crown itself digs into my wrist, because the crown is more rounded and the way it's cut isn't super harsh or sharp, it doesn't feel bad. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't leave a mark necessarily. So it is a very comfortable watch to wear, and it definitely will fit under a cuff. It will just look good, and because of its shape, I do think it also lends itself to casual wear because it just looks interesting. For more of a side view, you see it does fit pretty nicely, pretty comfortably on the wrist. Depending on how tight you wear your strap, you will have a little bit of sun shining through on the lugs there because the lugs don't turn down perfectly. But with that being said, it still is a very comfortable case to wear, and I do just enjoy how the watch wears, outside of the fact that depending on what strap you can wear, especially if it's a thicker strap, you can see that the kind of top end will kind of face up at you. It can look a little awkward on the Fear straps that it comes on. It doesn't look too bad, and it probably looks the best on the Fear strap. So that's just something to keep in mind. When I try on some other straps, you might be able to see it a little bit more. And before I move on to some other straps, this is the strap that it comes on. This is the medium length, which is standard, and I'm on the very last hole. So if your wrist is any smaller than mine, you might want to go down one size to small. So just keep that in mind. It does have a Fears buckle with the logo written out right there. Just a simple, classic, high polished buckle. Comfortable strap. It is lined in Alcantara, I believe, so it is very comfortable on the underside. Probably won't do great with sweat over time, so don't wear this when you're doing anything sporty or sweaty or anything like that. But outside of that, it is very comfortable, looks very good. It's not really overly padded, which I like too, because this is an already thin watch. You don't really need that much padding. So it is a really good quality strap, and I do enjoy this part, the quick release spring bars as well. So this is something they do really well on, and the fact is that I think it does also just pair perfectly with the look of the watch, the style of the watch, the numerals. It is just a very nice pairing for the watch, in my opinion. So moving on to one of the straps I think is pretty much made for this watch. This is a strap from Keepiece, and I believe it's called Swift Leather. I don't believe it's on their website, but if you just email them asking about it, they'll know what you're talking about and they can order it for you, or just show them a clip of this video or something. They'll be able to order you the strap that you need. It is very comfortable. It is very thin, just like the original Fear strap, but a little bit thinner. Very soft, very pliable, very comfortable. And I think just color tone wise, it works perfectly. This tannish, brownish tone really plays off the gold tones. The watch pop, brings the color out a little bit more, and obviously brings more color to the watch because of the strap. And yeah, it doesn't look too bad at all. And of course it is a little bit hard to see through the camera, but I can see it in person. You do see the strap pop up there, kind of facing you a little bit more. If I show you the watch from like a side view, like my wrist would be like that as I'm holding it, you can see that the strap again pops up a little bit above the lugs, and it just is an interesting thing I don't see with many watches, and is kind of just a fact of the way the lugs are shaped and how thick the lugs are. Next, to play off the blue tones that you sometimes see in the hands, I think if they were thicker, you'd see the blue pop out a little bit more. In direct sunlight, they do come out a little bit more, but indoors, it's a little bit hard to see at times. But again, to play off those tones, we do have this nice blue ostrich strap from, I believe, Fluco. Nope, that's wrong. This is actually from eBay, and I'll have it linked down below. Very comfortable, very good quality, and I just think it looks pretty cool. Adds a little bit of color. Maybe not my favorite combo. I'm not used to pairing things with yellows and golds because it's not usually a color tone that I go for, but the style is just cool, so there it is. Next, for a little bit of a richer combo, we have this deep green strap from Veblenist. Works really well with the gold tone. Definitely like how this feels. One of my maybe more preferred combos for this watch. Looks pretty great in my opinion. Makes it casual but dressy at the same time in a weird way in my opinion. And I think the colors just really match pretty well with each other. And just because I didn't do it earlier, if I move the watch up a little bit, I do have closer to a 6-inch wrist there. Again, because you do have a fairly short lug to lug, it still does fit pretty well. It will have a large presence just because it is a larger watch, and it does have a lot of surface area for its size, but that being said, it does proportionally fit. Next, we have a brown crocodile strap from Delugs. Not my favorite combo, honestly, but I feel like people would hate me if I didn't put a crocodile strap onto this dressy type watch. So hey, here it is. The color tones work fairly well together. I just don't think this is the perfect combo for the watch, but maybe you love it. Fairly comfortable. I think maybe the tone of the strap is a little too orange for the watch itself, but you get the idea. And then lastly, I just wanted to bring in this random watch I had lying around. It is a random little fashion brand watch that is from Paris. It is called Augard. Not quite sure if that's how you say it because I'm not French in any way, shape, or form, but I wanted to bring it in, one, because it is a cushion style cased watch just like the Fears is, but two, I think it approaches its lugs and its way that the straps integrate to it just a little bit better than the Fears does. So very quickly, just trying this watch onto my wrist. As you can see, the strap really doesn't poke up to me as much as the Fears does, and I'll show you kind of more of an A-B comparison by putting this exact same strap on the Fears. And I want you to kind of keep a note of this seam that runs along the strap itself and kind of see how that looks on the Fears. But as it stands, you know, the watch looks good, it's very comfortable, it's very sleek as well. It's about the same size as the Fears, but you can see the lugs are just a little bit thicker and they're actually slightly longer as well. And those both are points that contribute to the strap actually wearing better, surprisingly, than the Fears case. Here we have the green strap on the Fears. Honestly, not a terrible combo because the green tone just does work, but let's try this on. Here we have it on wrist, and again, you can see just more of that seam there at 12 o'clock. It is just a little bit unfortunate in my opinion. I think there is just these small little improvements they could make to the Fears case to make it wear a little bit better. I do think the lugs need to be a little bit thicker. Although again, this is more of a dress watch, I do think slightly thicker lugs that are slightly longer will just improve the way that these straps wear on it. Even if I take this watch off the wrist, you can see as I bend the strap down, they do pop up off the sides of the lugs, and it doesn't really do that with the other Augard case. And here we have the more fashion watch cushion case, and as I bend the strap down, you don't see the strap really poking off as much as the Fears case does, and at some angles really not at all. So it's a very interesting thing. You also see this watch has much more curvature in its lugs. They turn down a little bit more. Again, they're thicker. Again, they're longer. And all these, although they don't sound great on paper, you wouldn't necessarily want thicker and longer lugs, it actually does just contribute to a little bit of a better wearing strap and case experience. And just to note, I probably paid somewhere around $200 for this quartz watch, and I don't know exactly how much because they no longer post their watches on their website for some weird reason.
So starting off with pros for the watch, and I think one of the biggest pros for it is going to be the case shape in general. It is interesting to see a cushion case just in production in general. Many companies don't really go for it. You have Panerai, but they usually tend towards sportier case style. So this in a dress watch kind of can be sporty depending on the model. In a cushion case is very unique. The case itself is just nicely architectured in general. It has a lot of curves, the finishing is done pretty well, and it is well constructed. Adding on to that, for the most part, it also wears pretty well. It is a good size, it's relatively thin, and there's not much I can complain about with the wearing experience, so it is just a very good staple point for the brand with this case shape. Another big pro, especially for this watch in particular, is the dial itself. I think the dial process they've used is very interesting. It's something we haven't really seen very often. It is executed very well. The depth of color you can get out of it, the actual subtle texture that pops out on the dial, it is just pretty nice and something I just genuinely was surprised to see and surprised how well it came together in person. So moving on to cons, and I think one of the biggest cons for me is just going to be the QC in general. Of course, this isn't something that was a horror show necessarily, but I think the hands were pretty poorly finished, and the markers, I think, could have been finished better. You could see that on part of the dial, at least like from the 1 to 3 o'clock, there were very well finished markers, and on the rest of them, they were kind of, so-so. If all the markers were to the same standard that 1 to 3 range was, I would have been very happy. But there were just a few marks and blemishes here and there that I think were just almost uncalled for, something that should have been remedied, and I think something that, for a brand that praises its QC, should be accounted for. Another con for me is how the markers themselves aren't overly dynamic. Depending on the angle, they can change from like dark to light and whatnot, but at least in my experience, you had to move your wrist quite a lot for that change to happen. And it really just comes down to the fact that it is a very one-dimensional marker. There aren't any facets on it. Sure, it's tall, but to me, the height of the marker didn't really contribute to anything. It maybe looked kind of cool at an off angle, but other than that, it wasn't really all singing, all dancing, something that you should really write home about. If it was both tall and multifaceted, then we're getting somewhere. It adds a lot of dynamicism to the watch and would have been just, I think, more appropriate almost for the price range. I would have even paid a little bit more if that was done. But as it stands, the markers can look a little bit flat. They are nice if you like that kind of monochrome, grayed out kind of look, and it does pair well with the strap that it comes on and with the dial itself. But I personally would have preferred a little bit more color changing to the markers themselves, a little bit more faceting, and just a little bit more life. Another con, and this one is a little bit bigger for me, is the fact that the case, in my opinion, has a little bit of a strap issue, or more correctly, a lug construction issue. You can see when I compared it to the other cushion case that this Fears was a little bit shorter lug to lug. It had a little bit more stubbiness to it, and the strap doesn't really conform as well because of that. And in my opinion, if they made the lugs a little bit longer, a little bit thicker, it overall would have just made the wearing experience a little bit better, and I think a little bit more streamlined. Does it wear bad as it is? No, but if you especially have a thicker strap, to me it looks a little bit out of place, it sticks out too much, and it's something that I think is a little bit unrefined for a brand and for a watch that really tries to hammer home the fact that it is a very refined product. It is a very refined feeling that it's supposed to be giving you. And lastly, I think there is a design element to the dial where some things are just too thin. The branding, the lettering is a little bit too thin. To me, the Fears is very almost an afterthought on the dial itself. It doesn't pop out in any way, and it's just really, to me, doesn't look very premium. On top of that, the hands themselves, I think, fall into that similar category. They aren't that imposing. They have a little bit of elegance about them, but to me, it's almost gone a little bit too thin. With that unique shape, that pipette styling, I think a little bit of thickness around that hand shape would have done it justice. It makes this very unique handset a little bit more defined, a little bit more not only readable, but I just think a little bit more imposing on the dial, and something that you almost want your eye to be drawn to more. As it stands, instead of being a very prominent, nice design point that you really focus on, it's almost like the hands are purely only there to point to something else on the dial. And although that is their function, as an aesthetic thing, I think it can be a lot more powerful if you have it a little bit thicker. So final thoughts on this watch, and I wanted to like it a lot more than I did. It's a pretty well wearing case, and it's nice to see cushion cases just in general, but as it stands, I don't think value for money wise there's much to really write home about here. If you're looking to spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 maybe in this indie-ish micro brand space, you can go to Sartori Ballard, you can go to Ophion, and they both make more compelling products that are, I think, to a higher standard. Is this Fears watch a bad watch? Not by any means. It does have some really redeeming qualities like the dial itself, but I think overall it's one of those things where yes, it might be expensive to put this watch together, but that doesn't make it a good watch. To me, the QC is a little bit lackluster, the case shape needs a little bit of refinement, and overall there are just little tweaks and quirks that I think need to be shaken out in the design elements to make it a much better product. Who is this watch for, in my opinion? It's someone who is either just someone who purely loves dress watches and also loves the Fears aesthetic, or someone who just loves the Fears story and wants to support them as well. I don't think you're getting any crazy bang for buck watch. I don't think you're getting something that's necessarily groundbreaking in any way. It just is a watch, and it's not doing anything that will, I think, surprise you in a sense. To me, there's a lot of watches out there where your money would be better spent, and it sucks to say a little bit because I was hoping this would be a good watch in person, something that I would enjoy. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Tell me all the reasons I'm wrong down below. Thank you as always for watching the video. Hope you got something out of it, and I'll see you in another one.